Not me, but
no, yeah,
Not
well,
you.
been
Yeah.
12 or 13 languages.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Which is amazing.
And into English?
No, unfortunately not.
Oh, no, okay. Oh.
No.
Yeah, but I could maybe read it in Norwegian and Swedish, but not for the pleasure.
Yeah.
You know, it's difficult
Yes.
a little bit for the pleasure.
But you read French, didn't you? Is it published in French?
No.
No.
Unfortunately, mine not. No, yeah. Mine is in English, but not in French and German. No.
I'm sitting almost like in a sauna. It's so hot here. It's like it's been more than 30 for several days.
Wow.
Here as well. I have all the windows open and it's just not any breeze. It's crazy. 30 degrees.
I closed them so I don't hear lots of voices outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to be not in the same place, I feel.
It is very strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay, but it's working, but somehow, especially when it's not our language, English, and then it's so, for me, important to be in contact and, you know, to be in the same place is a little bit important for me.
Yeah.
But,
it's
a lot easier.
More of a challenge to show who you're talking to and and to interact in a nice way.
I'm very excited about the conversation because it's hard to know who is commenting to whose line and you're always, I mean, at least I'm scared to interrupt and then suddenly you start talking at the same time because we don't see each other.
We're gonna have to do this.
Yeah, it's like, I have something to say.
I'm gonna try to put earphones on and see if it's better.
Yeah, usually it is better. Yeah.
Less noises.
Oh. I only have very huge ones, so
it will be cool. Have you been doing a lot of Zoom meetings?
No.
Not lot, some, just few, yeah. Not for literature. I've only been doing it for somehow like because of COVID, everybody here is like thinking about the crisis, the financial crisis and so on. So there are many like Zoom podcasts, you know, that people are trying to commentate on that. But yeah, I don't know actually how to put
I was in one crazy meeting. It was a big an organization that was overtook by Nazis in their annual meeting. So they arranged a new meeting with a new. They tried to have lots of new members and have a new annual meeting to change back to the right board.
Wow.
So it was, and so I took part in that, and it was more than 500 people, or it was like 450 people in the meeting. It was very strange. It took forever.
Yeah.
It was really nice, funny to look through all the faces because people were lying down. It took so long. So.
Yeah. Wow, that's. At least there is somebody coming there. We can hear there's a lot of people apparently coming.
Do you know how many is there at the club? No, you don't.
I think he said they were supposed to be 3. Or do you mean in the
audience?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, here they are.
Okay, hello.
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 I'm not sure if you all have seen your books in our Croatian translation. So this is my colleague Darko.
Hello.
Darko edited most of the books we are presenting tonight, including all of your 3 books. And you asked about the audience. Maybe we can somehow at some point turn the laptop around so you can see the audience. We can do that at the end if you agree.
Okay, that's
Because
nice.
the audience is here in front of us, and small audience. They're seeing you on the video wall above our heads.
Okay.
So it's functioning pretty well. And I must admit, I'm excited.
Yeah, this is the first time this kind of presentation.
I think that is better speaking. So okay, so we are ready to go. Okay. I will just first. I want to ask you if you have seen your books in Croatian translation, because we've sent the books, for example, to Odni, but they were returned because the postage doesn't work between Iceland and Croatian.
No,
so,
I haven't seen it. No, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, here is your book. Okay?
Wow. Okay, beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. And here is Ida's book. Ida, have you seen your book?
I only saw a picture of it, yes. Oh no, it's actually different from what I saw online. Wow, that's very nice.
It's an installation that one local artist did on the wall of one of the buildings in Zagreb. It represents a broken heart, but we had, I don't know if you know that we had a strong earthquake in March, and a lot of buildings were damaged in Zagreb. So it was, we kind of wanted to correlate with both personal and social damage in when it's when you face a breakup, let's say.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Francis is also here.
Wow. Good to see. I recognize it looks a little bit like the Swedish and French.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with the conversation. I want to present to everyone our guests of tonight. Ida Hegazi Hoyer is a Norwegian author who won the European Union Prize for Literature in 2014 for the novel Forgive Me or Oprosti in Croatian. And she is a very active writer at the Norwegian book scene, and we will talk about that a little bit later. I just wanted to ask Ida, but we can go later to that. Have you ever met Bekim Sejranović, a Bosnian Croatian author who wrote in Norwegian? And
Yes.
he passed away last month,
I know.
sadly.
Yes.
Okay, I would like to ask you later if you ever met him or you ever maybe read some of his work. Then with us is Odni Eyre, Icelandic author who won for her book that we translated, The Land of Love and Ruins, or Zemlja i Mir in Croatian translation by Dora Maček. She won Icelandic prize for women literature. Did I translate it good, Odni?
Yes.
The title of the prize. Okay. And also European Union Prize for Literature, the same one as the Ida won, but not the same year, I think.
No,
when was your?
I don't remember. I think 2014, I think.
2000.
Or I don't know, yeah, or 2013 maybe, or sorry, yeah.
Okay, then it's before Ida's prize, but you haven't been in the same selection.
No.
You haven't been chosen for the EU prize the same year. Okay, that's also what I would like to ask you later. How much the European Union prize helped you with getting translated to other languages. Last but not least, with us is Joanna Hellgren, a Swedish graphic novel and comic book author, both writer and artist. Who wrote the book Francis in French and published it in French because she was living in Paris for a certain time, even though she's a Swedish author and her native language is Swedish. So also that's very interesting, and I would like to ask you later about your work in more languages and how does that fit. So let's move to the books, which are going very well. The two that we published a little bit earlier, Odni's book and Ida's book. Francis just came out of the print, but I'm sure we have a great comic book audience and great publishers, and I'm sure that it will go good. So, Darko, would you like to start with the questions? Yes.
So we will open with Ida. So is Forgive Me a love story or a psychological thriller?
I guess both. Absolutely.
Maybe even horror.
What?
Maybe even horror.
Maybe
story.
even horror. Yes, it is. It is in fact a love story, but it's well. Do you want me to tell a little bit about the book, or?
Of course.
Yeah, please.
It's about a young girl falling in love with a slightly older man. She's around 20 and he's a bit older, 25, and it's this young, very super consuming kind of mad love, and they don't really know anything about one another, and he asks if she wants to marry him, and she says yes, and they move in together without knowing who they really are, and they sort of turn their backs to the world, and they escape into this relationship. And quite soon she gets the first signs that things are not as they are supposed to be, and that he's not in fact the man who he claims to be. And so on one hand, it's about this love relationship that's gradually falling apart, but through this relationship you get to know this man who is the main character, who is a very well, it's actually a story about a boy coming from a very violent and damaged home who learned how to lie as a kid to be able to cope with reality. And so now he's adult and he does no longer know what's real and what's not, basically.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, I have a question for Odni. Is your book a novel, a diary, or an autobiography, or is it just some kind of magical invitation to visit Iceland?
No, it's not it's not an invitation to Iceland, but well, I think it's all of what you mentioned. It's what did you mention? Diary, novel, or autobiography? Yeah, it's all. It's
yes.
Yeah. I want to mix it to have it really a mixture of that all.
Is that usually how you write? Do you prefer to move through the genres and styles, or this book was different?
No, I started writing autobiographies. I published the first one in 2004. And then in Iceland, at least, it was only like old farmers that published autobiographies, or famous actresses, or political heroes. So it was at that time very fun. Everybody asked me, why are you writing an autobiography? And I thought that somehow was like a private joke and a political point, also like a feminist point a little bit, that I would be able to wake up and go through the day without accidents and without doing really many mistakes. That was a heroic, that made me a hero somehow. So that I wanted just to write about my life, and my life was nothing special, and this nothing special. Yeah, but I somehow believe in writing, like that. I somehow have this wish that everybody writes their autobiography. You know, I so much, every time I meet a person, I really have this desire that this person writes or tells its story. And that's from what I remember when I was a small. Also, my father is a radio programmer, and he was always traveling around Iceland collecting stories from people that, you know, he was saying like, oh my God, if this person dies now, then a huge archive gets lost. So, you know, I had this like urgency of trying to collect some stories.
The memories and the data.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, okay. Near you.
Okay. Question for Joanna. Where did you seek the inspiration for your novel, and why did you choose the pencil technique?
The inspiration came from all sorts, all kind of, from lots of novels, from old black and white movies, and from my life at the time, even though it takes place in some past, way before I was born.
Kind of, also, there is also some autobiographical elements.
No, not really, no. But it was,
Okay.
but it was inspired by my life in the sense that that was the kind of universe I felt I wanted to create at the time. I was 25 when I started it, and I finished it in 2011. So now we can count. And I felt that I was working on it for 5 years, and I felt that I changed a lot during that time. So that changed also the story. And the reason I worked in pencil is that I like that kind of drawings, and I wasn't attracted to strictly black and white or color comics at the time. So I was trying to make a comic book in the style that I liked to draw. And I was also very inspired by comic artists like Anke Fechtenberger from Germany, and also Amanda Vähämäki from Finland. So that was one of the reasons. And also the drawing style is, I was trying to have a very simple way of working. I wanted to be able to work anywhere. So all the pages are drawn on A4 paper with pencil, and I was sketching and then finishing everything on the same page. And that meant I could bring it anywhere, and I've been working on it on subway, in cafes, in other people's homes, and in front of lots of movies. And that was one part of why it was finished quite quickly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Actually, not to lose the thought, Joanna. in Sandorf, in our publishing house, we published maybe up to now 6, 7 comic book editions. So it's not a lot, but there is something specific out of these 6 or 7 books. 3 of them are Scandinavian authors.
Mm.
Your book is the first one that's not in a way engaged politically or socially, because we published Morten Dier and Lars Horneman Zenobia. That's a Danish comic book, and Liv Strömquist, The Fruit of Knowledge, up to now. And we decided basically for your book on a recommendation of a great young illustrator who did some work for our covers, Anna who suggested your book, and when we read it, we said we want to do this, even though we were more, for us, comic is we see it more as a tool of expressing some important social political stance, because it's a very expressive genre. But also we since we published we are publishing more and more comics, we got more deep into the genre, and now we're looking after your book, we're looking for other comics which are not necessarily politically or socially engaged. They're more good literature. So your book opened this space for us, and I'm very happy that you did.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to that illustrator.
Yes, I will let her know that we spoke to you. Definitely.
Okay, the second question for Ida. In what way the philosophy of Ayn Rand influenced one of the protagonists of the novel? Why have you indirectly involved the author into the novel? This author into the novel. This was kind of a surprise for me, you know, all this Ayn Rand story.
Yeah.
So
well,
we can see. I'm sorry, Ida, just for the audience, how much you know, have you heard about Ayn Rand, a so-called ideologist of the neoliberal individualism and the ideology? Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It could have been another book. It wasn't necessarily had to be about Howard Rourke and Ayn Rand, but this man who the main character of my book, he claims to study philosophy, and he claims to sort of have this admiration for the man who is self-made, and he, which is of course very misunderstood, is not misunderstood, but it's sort of it's a paradox, because he's such a victim, comes out in the end that he's not at all self-made, but he has reinvented himself, and I guess I wanted to explore the idea of identity. We have an idea that we are like this, and that our identity is sort of fixed, but we are so much more fluid than we are aware, and we are a product of all of the situation that we are in, and of course our cultural surroundings and all that. And he obviously he's mentally ill, and I wanted to show that mental illness, to create a sort of opposite, which is his great admiration for this Howard Rourke on top of his building. It's more of a metaphor, I guess.
Okay. Thanks.
when you import a certain political philosophy into the book, is it a burden, or it was something playful that helped you develop a character, develop a situation?
I wouldn't say it was a burden. It was more playful. I wanted to make my main character small. Yeah.
Did you read Ayn Rand's book, Ida?
Yeah. If I read it?
Did you
Yes.
read it? Yeah.
I read it a long time ago. I brought it with me on a actually I went how do you say it, backpacking in Southeast Asia is what every Norwegian does when they're finished with college, and I brought with me Ayn Rand on that trip. So it's like 20 years ago, and I was very fascinated. But then me personally now I don't have a relation to Ayn Rand. Of course, everyone thinks I do because I put her in the book, but I put a lot of books into every book I write, and it's not necessarily personal for me.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad because of that.
Yeah.
Oddly, there is a certain feeling of Icelandic folklore in your book. Is that something that you already mentioned now? When you mentioned your father going through the island and collecting statements and memories of older people or different people. Now somehow I find a correlation between what comes out of the novel. But is there any Nordic tradition of naturalism, natural realism, like for example Hamsun or other authors who were writing about the nature and the human relation to the nature, or you wanted to detach from that tradition?
Yeah, good question. I have never thought about that before, actually. Knut Hamsun, of course, had, I mean, I read him and it was just beautiful influence, but not like a conscious influence. I think more maybe the literature of Fritz Jacobsen and William Heinesen in the Faroe Islands, where it's where you can just feel the nature very. It's less ideological. It's more like just that you are situated in nature somehow when you write, and when you like you somehow think of situating yourself and trying to create a standpoint or a viewpoint somehow. I think that's more of it. But I guess like the way of writing, like this Icelandic style of the sagas, for example, they are really cleverly constructed, and it's all there are like many stories interwoven, and that's what influenced me. That like there is never just like story of one person and goes through, but there is also like the meeting of people and the conversation, and that's somehow makes the plot. So I wanted to make like that, but not to be clever and not to be so I'm more like putting because I studied philosophy in Paris, so I put more like a little bomb of deconstruction into the plot. So there are like just you know, flesh and bones all over, and just, yeah, it's very fragmentary. That's why that's how I feel that we are trying to construct a new way of looking at the world and answering some vital questions. And they are both very private and very political, especially in a times of a crisis. Then it all comes together. Your questions and the questions of your ancestors, the questions, the political questions, private questions, philosophical, poetical. So it's like, And I did not put Ayn Rand in my book, but another hero that is for me a much better hero called Hannah Arendt. So her idea of that we need to be active citizens and that we have to take part in creating a space of expression in our way and to tell stories, that yeah, that somehow is like a hidden political agenda of my book, even though yeah
vita activa.
Yes, so it's vita activa, but not in a heroic manner, but like really a little bit neurotic and also very playful way somehow, a little bit into the absurd and yeah.
Da li čujete dovoljno glasno autore? Da, okay.
Joanna, maybe it's a funny question, but I was just curious. Why all the characters have somewhat oversized heads?
Sorry, why do they all have
Oversized heads? You know.
Well, I think they have more. The heads are bigger in the beginning. I think. Well,
Okay,
it's not really it's not something I prepared. Like I'm gonna do very big heads. I think it was just a matter of drawing style.
Okay.
A bit naive, almost realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They all seem a little bit more childish, like children with these big heads.
Yes. Well, one of the goals when I tried to do that was just to draw how I draw. I wasn't trying to make a style for this book, except that I chose the materials, but I was just drawing the way I was drawing at the time. So in that way you can see it changes a bit between the three parts of it. So that was just the way I was drawing at the time. But I think I've always had a tendency to do big heads, like drawing big heads. That sounded awful. Sorry.
Are there more translations beside these new Croatian translations of Francis?
Well, it first came out in French because that was the first publisher I got in touch with, actually. And then it's published in Spanish and Italian. But I didn't know about this translation until you contacted me, so maybe there are others that I don't know of. I don't think so.
It's interesting because
Swedish, of course,
we were in contact with Okay, yeah. We were in contact with Kambourakis, your French publisher, all the time. But we started working actively to finish and publish the book, maybe at the time when Corona started. So it's maybe why they haven't contacted you, because we had a problem. They couldn't access their office during the pandemic, so they couldn't send us a certain amount of files for your book. So it was a kind of drama, but everything went well.
That's good.
Okay, I'm looking at the time. We have one more question for each one of you, and then we can just maybe a bit we can please comment on the situation, on your environment. How do you feel with this crisis? So Dark, are you?
I have. For Ida, next question. In the kindergarten, there is a character of a boy who behaves horribly, but it seems the mother is abusive. So, is it always the parents' fault?
No.
So, boy is just evil, or what?
No, I just wanted to put in some extra scenes to show how we're not always capable of doing the right thing. I mean, you see, where does the line go for where to actually say to some stranger that, hey, is that the right way to treat your child or your dog or your grandma, for that matter? We really fear to speak out. We're so afraid of you know, saying the wrong thing or going into other people's private zones. And the woman working in the kindergarten, seeing this woman maybe not doing anything wrong, it's just like the sort of Murray situation. She's not quite sure, but then she doesn't dare to speak out. And I think a lot of people have seen some things that sort of haunt us, where we go to bed at night and we have this thought like, the thing I saw on the bus today or whatever, and we just sit there. Usually, it's human, I guess, but no, it's not always the parents' fault. Short answer.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Oddly, do you have any literary role models that could be a scene like coming through in your book? And what do you remember what you were reading while you were writing The Land of Wild and Ruin?
Wow. I was more reading maybe philosophy than literature for many years. I didn't have patience to read literature. I always read a lot of poetry, and then literature and about flowers. Like, so finally now I've settled down. The book is a lot about trying to find a place to sleep more than one night in your life, a place where you can be both very social and have the ability and the peace to think and to write, and also to be a mother or a family member and a social member. And finally, I've actually found a home where I put up my huge, I have a huge library. So I'm a horrible like book hoarder or collector. And then
We all are.
Okay. And then I realized actually that it's so good for me to see, you know, it's like I'm mapping my brain, that there is philosophy, anthropology, ethnography, botanical studies, and then literature, this kind of memories. So I've always been reading all kinds of things somehow when I'm, because I need to get that that extremities, very political stuff and very poetic stuff. And books also for artists and about fine arts and aesthetic and so on. So I'm sorry, I cannot quite remember what I was reading at that time, but it was more based on the conversation I had with my friends, and about literature, but about the situation and about our love affairs and we had all been in very bad and like horrible love affairs, and we were so much in a crisis. So we needed somehow to reinvent the relationship of love, and we wanted also to reinvent how we fight for nature and environmentalism. We wanted to fight for the way we can speak about the difference between nationalism and internationalism. So we were like in the reality, in that it's very autobiographical, that my friends we were really feeling the urge to reinvent a little bit the way we were thinking. So So I was thinking I wanted to write this book based, and if I could like capture the essence of our conversations. So I was more talking than reading at that time, I must say. I had been reading endlessly for for many years, so I was a little bit just now speaking and
Maybe you read Virginia Woolf.
I had written earlier. I read her diaries when I was
I
supposed.
just try to guess.
Okay, thank you. You are the first one, yeah. But I read actually Virginia Woolf and Anais Nin at the library when I was studying philosophy, and it was so difficult to hand in the final, the final papers. So I preferred to sneak out to the library and read the diaries of Virginia Woolf, yes.
Okay, last question for Joanna. You are writing in French, although you come from Sweden. How do you feel when you're writing in the language other than your mother tongue?
Well, I think that was part of, it was in one way because of inexperience. I started doing that story while I had already, I was already publishing one book with that publisher, Frederick Kamborakis. And so when I started this story, I made it first I started in Swedish, and I was showing parts of the story while doing it to Frederick. And after a while I started to write in French because just to be able to show it. But that's something I would never do today, because now I'm too aware that that's not, because then I think I didn't have a problem while I was writing it, but I think the thought takes the parts that I can control. So I think that really influences what kind of language the book has. It became even simpler, maybe. But I made a story for a Belgian anthology a few years later, and then I'd made a story in English because it was a collaboration with a Finnish artist, and then I tried to translate it into French for them, and they didn't want my translation, so they did another one. But I've heard from French people that they find my French a bit funny, but Edition Kamborakis liked to have it, even though it was sometimes a bit weird. So that was great. The French that I have after studying it at school, but not being a very good student, and then to live there for almost 3 years. But I think I speak French maybe better now since moving back, because then I had more contact with only French people than I had when I lived there. So if I was to do a book today, I would do it in Swedish. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't know if you're talking, but you froze. Yeah.
We like it. We like it the way you did it, same as Kamborakis, as your French publisher.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sure the Croatian audience will like it too. Okay, so let's just touch upon a little bit for the end on how do you feel now in this moment? Usually, probably all of you were traveling in. By now, you would already be somewhere in other countries in these past 3 or 4 months. How do you feel staying, I guess, in one place and working? Is stimulating for you, or it's not? Do you see any kind of positive change in all of this that is happening, or maybe positive changes in literature, if not in politics? Either.
Well, things in Oslo are quite back to normal now, which feels good. Feels very good to be able to see your friends again, of course, and that sort of thing. But when we were in lockdown for a couple of months, and I spoke to my author colleagues about this, because since there was nothing else to do than to sit at home, one would think that we would be very productive. But I wasn't. It was like a sort of carpet fell over the city, and we were sort of halfway paralyzed. And so did my other colleagues say the same, that we were just walking around in some sort of fog, and we didn't get to do a lot. And I guess it proves that we are very dependent on being influenced. You know, we need to meet other people, we need to travel and go places to get that energy canalized, I suppose. And in the beginning, I felt sort of trapped. Of course, it's a very I mean, we have everything we need, so we have nothing to complain about. But you're so used to be able to go somewhere, and then finally you cannot, and it's a strange thing. But I think in the end we came out very well, and I think it was good for us to just sit back and stay home and think, get more time to relax, I guess, and to think about what we are and how we are living. And I actually think it had a positive thing to it.
Yeah.
And now I'm able to write again.
Yeah. What's the meaning of life and everything?
What's the meaning of life?
Yeah, I mean, you have time to think about that. I'm kidding.
Well,
okay.
I'm not going to answer.
So what's going on in Reykjavik?
Well, Reykjavik is the same. I mean, we are not, I don't know. We managed quite well because we are an island, obviously. So it was more easy here to somehow close and to isolate it. So we have the sea as our barrier, which was very fortunate. But I do agree. It was like, it is an important time for everybody to refigure the meaning of life and so on, meaning of one's life and so on. But what is striking, I think, here in Iceland, that we have somehow seen so much like we are seeing a lot of cases of injustice. Somehow it's like the situation reveals how, I mean, we had a financial crisis 10 years ago or 12 years ago. And then we somehow managed to go on and to restart the wheels of the economics. And now we are realizing that we did it a little bit with the same ideas that before, that we didn't, so we were a little bit cheating, you know, we somehow, so now people are really angry about somehow, okay, we all came out, not so many people were sick, not many people died, but we have understood that the people that had to keep the system going, those are the people that are really somehow badly treated, and also foreigner people that have come here and are not paid very well and so on. So for me, it's a little bit, it has been a difficulty for me that I wanted to jump almost into politics, you know, not into political party, but to be, again, like I was 12 years ago in the crisis, I was very active in the fighting for the environment and so on. And somehow I felt the urge to step in again. And so it disturbed very much my process of publishing my new novel. So I'm trying to get just this I'm telling myself, okay, I will do more good just publishing my thing and getting this energy, you know, this somehow getting into it book, but not get out there in the so I'm not going to become political, but you know, there is this little bit frustration, a little bit, yeah. Did you understand?
Yeah, yes, definitely. I think we all feel kind of frustrated and still don't know what we missed, or maybe we did good. We don't yet know. Joanna, I want to ask you, we all always hear about the Swedish model, but we don't basically know what the Swedish model is. So what Swedish model from your perspective? I mean, regarding the pandemic, did you feel safe? Did you feel okay?
Yes and no. Like in the beginning, I was well. I can first describe how the Swedish model was, and that it is that we never had any strict lockdown, and the schools for the younger children weren't closed, and neither the preschool daycare. And but there are lots of strict rules that we're supposed to follow, like not taking any public transportation if we don't have to go on an important work, and to not meet friends, and to not meet people out of our strict circle. And we have all the time been able to go out, but we've had like the rule of keep 2 meters of distance if it's possible. But at the same time, bars and cafes have been open, and then it's impossible to keep 2 meters. So it's like a double standard in a way. So everyone who can has been told to work from home. So me and my partner have been working at home since March, beginning of March. In the beginning, I was very frustrated because they knew that lots of people were coming back from vacations from areas where they knew there was an active spread, but they never told those people to stay at home and wait and see what happened. So people were going to work and the schools on the Monday after a vacation. And I think that was unnecessary. But but in another way, I think it was a good thing to keep the schools open, because and now it's visible that people are some people are taking it less serious now, even though the rules have been exactly the same since mid-March. And as you said, Odni, you really start to see lots of injustice, and more than 5,000 people have died in Sweden, which is a lot, and many of them were old. And it has revealed a lot about the things that were already known, like how things that like the working, how the people who work with the elderly, their situation at work. Lots of people work like 1 day at a time and meet lots and lots of people in the same day. I know even just like the last 10 years, I have lots of friends who have been working with elderly people and who have been able to see how they try to save money all the time. So all these, like the quality of the care for the elderly has gone down, and also the situation at work for the people who does that work. And in this pandemic, it has been horrible, because it's impossible to stop a pandemic if the people who work don't get any salary if they don't go to work, and they didn't have enough protection, and also they meet up to 10 people in a day. Yeah, so that has been like, it was known before, but now it has been visible and it's up on the agenda. For me personally, it hasn't changed so much. I haven't been traveling the last years because of a huge climate anguish. And I have a 3-year-old, so I'm just trying to get my work done.
Joanna, thank you for your insight. Just I wanted to ask Ida about has she ever met Bekim Seranovic? For those in our audience who will later stay for the third part of our conversation, which is the dedication to Bekim Seranovic. Have you ever met him, Ida, or read any of his pieces?
I have met him. He was, but I didn't meet him as a writer. I met him many years ago because he was a friend of a friend, and so he was part of a group that I guess it's like, yeah, I'm getting old. It's like almost 17 years ago or something, and we used to hang out in weekends and that sort of things. And then I met him from time to time through the years. Very nice guy, always pleasant to talk to. And then we published books, and we were always saying that I haven't read you yet, but we were talking about I'm going to read you, and then we never did. But now I am going to read him. It was such a shame. It was so soon. He was not old at all. So I know that some of my friends had in Norway we have something called like a funeral beer when somebody passes, and they had this event for him. So yeah, that was very unfortunate. So young.
Yeah, most of his books are published in Norwegian, but Bodni and Joanna, we just published Bekim's book in English, his first novel, and I'll be glad to send you a copy together with your originals if you're interested.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Okay, great. Okay, so we came to the end of our little conversation. I will just turn around now the laptop so you can say hi to the audience, and then I wish we meet in person for the second presentation.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'll just now turn around the laptop.
Okay.
And take care. I hope you'll all be safe and productive. Thank you.
Thank you. The best. Same for you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation, and everything will be all right.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, I wish we could meet next in flesh and bones, and
Yes.
and in good health. Yeah.
Okay. Audience.
Thank you.
Molim vas pljesak.
Hey.
Hello.
Oh, beautiful.
Great. Thank you for joining us, and see you next time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Sara, možeš ti pustiti njih? Da, autorica je navedena na tu piše.
Jer sam vidjela to u Kabelićevoj.
Je. Ružica, hoćeš nam se ti pridružiti? Evo sad su Sava i Poma. Ružica, ti isto imaš pitanje neko?
Imam, ali koje prvi sada? Malo ili
Hi.
Hi, David.
Hi.
Najbolje da Ivana pričekamo. Mislim da on ne može.
Dobro, koliko svako pola sata ili kako?
Pa vidjela se sad neke info. Znači on
Da,
pa koliko će to
Ne,
trajati.
koliko će trajati svaki ovaj, ali oni su zajedno.
Pa zajedno ćemo da.
Aha,
Isto kao i ovo.
dobro. Što ja nisam čitala ovo, ali to uopće, znači ja sam samo malo. Jesu to isto priče ili ne?
Šta da?
Jesu ovo isto drugo priče? Ova druga
Ne, ovo su, ne, ovako, normalije su zbirka priča.
To znam to.
Da, a ovo je
Aha, ovo je.
David, this is your book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Did you saw it?
No, this is the first time I see it. I really like that cover. Great.
Yeah, I chose the photography
Yeah.
of this
Yeah.
old guy. Yeah.
Nice.
It's a
Nice.
kind of irony.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I really, it captures the humor of the book as well. It's great. It's great. Yeah.
I'm glad you like it. It's pretty thick, you know. Yeah. Hello, Mauro.
Hi, nice to
Hi.
meet you.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
We are waiting for Ivan and then we will start.
Okay.
Dobro, aha, a metar i pola.
Ivane, ti znaš da ja nisam čitala ovu. Samo malo. Ja da sjednem.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
We are
You're social distancing.
yeah we are trying to social distance.
Doesn't look like
Hi,
it.
Mauro.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Great that you made it. And unfortunately, Naya, who should have been with us in this conversation, her father is very sick, and she said she has to be with him all the time, and it's a very bad situation. So she apologized. And,
I have some trouble to hear you.
okay, should I speak louder?
Okay, thank you.
Is it better?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we will talk about two of your books. Anomalies came out a month and a half ago, and All That Man Is just came out from the printers. So both books are really fresh and new, and we have some questions, but we don't have to keep it in a form of question and answer. We can meander the way we want to make it interesting for our audience. At the end of the conversation, I will turn around the laptop so you can see the audience, because we couldn't make it the other way, because the audience see you on the video wall above us.
But how many people are there?
It's about 7-8 people.
But they're coming.
But some others are outside. They will now come in. It's not a big crowd, but I don't know if you knew, we had a kind of resurgence of the virus in last 1 week. So the situation is kind of shaky. We don't know whether the public events will be allowed the next week. So we are not broadcasting this live, but we are recording the session. So the session will be available at Booksi Book Club website, and also on our social media, Sandorf social media, and we will broadcast it. So probably a lot of people will see it online.
Okay.
The situation is literally shaky because we had this earthquake recently.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. We have news about that.
Yeah, it was like some kind of judgment day approach or something. First Corona and then the earthquake. So what's next?
Locusts.
Locusts.
In Italiano,
okay,
it rains on.
Darko, will you?
It rains on wet. On wet. You say in Italiano, it rains on wet concrete.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, David. You probably heard this question before, but I'm really interested. Some critics were discussing whether All That Matters is a novel or collection of stories. How you define it as a novel?
Well, I'm not sure I'd go as far as to say that it is a novel. I would certainly say that it's not a collection of short stories, though. I see it very much as a single thing, a single organic work. Whether that work can be called a novel, I'm not going to sort of make a sort of judgment on that, because that, I suppose, is something which can genuinely be discussed. I mean, the novel, as we understand it, has certain ideas of unity, unity of character, I suppose, most fundamentally, that this book does not have in a literal sense. So I understand why people question whether it's a novel, but I certainly reject the idea that it's just a collection of short stories. For me, I feel very strongly it's a single unified work of some description.
Yeah, so it's not a collection of stories and it's not a novel. So it's something completely new.
Yes, yes. I mean, I guess, I mean, I don't know what word you might use, but I mean, for convenience, we can call it a novel, I suppose.
Yes,
and there
yes.
is, I mean, it has certain things that a novel typically has, like a plot. I'd say this book has it in a form. I mean, it has a pattern, if you like, which fulfills many of the things that a plot would normally do in a novel, which it generates suspense, it creates a sense of structure, of beginning, middle, and end. So it does do all the things you could argue that a novel is supposed to do, just not in a typical way.
Yeah, I even noticed some connections between some characters from different stories. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's only at the end. I mean, there's only, in a literal sense, in a sort of sense of the actual content, there's only one connection between any two of the stories. But all the stories were written with their place in this book in mind. They weren't written and then just brought together for convenience in a single volume. They were written with the structure already envisaged and imagined.
Okay, thanks.
Hi. Unfortunately, I didn't read David's book because it's freshly it's freshly published, but I did read this one, and I want to congratulate you on a beautiful Croatian edition. I was very happy to read it. Some of the stories I read even twice, and some of them rang really close to my heart, especially the one about the children playing basketball during the wartime. I was also a child during that period, so I also experienced war, but also in this playful way, these children experienced it too. So that one was a really great story for me. Also, I want to talk about genre of a short story. For instance, here in Croatia, mostly young authors publish short story collection. I'm aware you wrote this when you were around 30 years old, and I'm not sure if you're writing still stories today, but most writers here in Croatia do not write the stories after they publish their first novel. So basically, a short story collection is sort of a first step in becoming a writer, and then the writers never return to writing stories. So my question is, what is your stance on writing short stories, and what is the situation in Italy regarding that? Are publishers keen on publishing short stories today in Italy?
So there are some publisher focused on short stories in Italy, but I think as in the other part of the world, publisher prefer to public novels because they sell more than short stories. Anyway, that shows those short stories you mentioned in Anomalie. I were published that story their stories in so I wrote them in 1995, 1990, between 1995 and 1997. So a lot of time passed. And in Italy, that book was published in 1998. And above all, let me mention three Croatian people: Tatjana Peruško, Snježana Husić, and Roman Simić, that invited me in the 1998 just in Zagreb, in a sort of festival that took place in Zagreb in that period as a European of short, a festival of European shows of short stories or something. And so now Tatjana and Snježana are two professors at university, and Roman, as you know, is a famous writer in Croatia. But I remember them as three fantastic guys, very funny. We had we spent 3 or 4 wonderful days in Zagreb, and they were fantastic. Above all, I want to mention them because Tatjana and Snježana make me know Ivan Goran Kovačić. And so they told me, have you ever heard Ivan Goran Kovačić? And in that time, I didn't know him. And thanks them, I recognized him. I read Yama. And then I looking for on the internet in the beginning of internet in the 90s, and the only picture of Ivan Goran Kovačić was with him with his heavy overcoat, and I hurried to the shop to buy a similar heavy overcoat, and I dressed that overcoat for decades. That's because for here how is important for me, and how that kind of meeting was important for me. About Anomalie, yeah. They are short stories, 11 short stories. 3 of them, they are connected, as you know, connected. 3 stories connected with the same character and same environment, the same setting. I was inspired for that kind of short stories. I was inspired by the movie of Krzysztof Kieślowski that used to make that kind of movie link together for environment and characters, you know, the Decalogue or 3 colors of the flag. And well, they are 3. They are connected together, and they are set in a city very, very similar to Sarajevo. They are inspired by Sarajevo, but they are not focused on Sarajevo, because I didn't want to dedicate stories or a novel on a city, but I want to try to how do you say, to picture the everyday life of people who live in a city surrounded by guns, surrounded by enemy troops, and you know better than me, of course. In those years, I very shocked. We use during 90s. It could be a good debate. I think we use to follow war on TV. We follow on TV the invasion of Emirates of Kuwait by the American US Army, and we follow. We watch.
It actually never happened. It actually never happened. It's only on TV, you know.
Yeah.
It was only on TV.
Right. And we watch on TV the war, Croatia war, and the attack, Sarajevo under attack, and of course I was very touched and shocked because, you know, my family name doesn't sound Italian, Kovacic, and I felt my root, I felt my identity, I felt everything in that kind of strange picture on TV, and they moved them, but I didn't want to focus on them because I considered that it could be not very honest, not very fair and honest, because I've never visited Sarajevo before the stories, and so that's a reason why I prefer use Sarajevo if you can accept it. Use Sarajevo to try to dig to find how do you say, to find a core of the human condition. In that first story, I try to describe this kind of contradiction between the life of the young, of the youth that can struggle, can fight against the war, because it's a sort of nature, is a sort of a powerful will that you have inside, and you can go against bombs, against the guns, because you want to play basketball. It could be appear absurd, but it is. So that's the first one. But I stopped to speak so much. So sorry.
David, All the Minis was nominated for Man Booker Prize, and the title of the book is very engaging, or thought-provoking, and all the male characters you're describing are partly dysfunctional. You're describing in the book. So would you say, or have you already met with this question? Are all men, or is male species doomed in the contemporary world?
Well, it was interesting because while I was writing the book, I had never heard of the phrase the crisis of masculinity. But as soon as the book was published, I was being continually asked whether the book was about that. And on reflection, partly yes, but it's one of the interesting ways in which, I suppose, writing a book, you don't really know what you're writing about, or there's this funny sense if you're just absorbing something from the air, from the sort of contemporary situation, and then you find that you've written about a subject that other people already have a name for. So yes, I think so. I think so. I mean, obviously the book takes a, fairly, all the characters, as you say, or almost all of them, are in some form of crisis in their lives, and the stories focus on this moment of crisis, and So that builds up into a picture of perhaps a sort of generalized crisis of masculinity. But as I say, that was not at the forefront of my mind as I was writing the book. I mean, what I was consciously writing, what I thought I was writing, and what I think the book is as well, is a book about mortality and a book about time. And I was very focused on each of the 9 stories, which are, for people who haven't read the book, about 9 progressively older male characters, starting with a 17-year-old and ending with a man in his 70s. What I was focused on when I was writing the book, I suppose, was trying to depict as viscerally as possible what it is like to be that age. And I wanted each story to do that. And I felt that if each story could do that successfully, the book as a whole would sort of build into something which was about a whole process, of aging and the process of living in time, which is obviously what we all are doing. So that was, I suppose, more at the front of my mind as I was writing the book. But I mean, I say that actually, but there was always the masculine aspect as well, because the original title that I wanted to use for the book was a line from a Led Zeppelin song. In the days of my youth, I was told what it means to be a man. And we couldn't use it just for copyright reasons, because Led Zeppelin wouldn't give us permission, even if we offered to pay them. So we couldn't use it. So All the Man Is was then a sort of backup title, which also is good. And perhaps the Led Zeppelin title was just too long. It might have been a bit silly, but so yeah, I guess there was always as well that masculinity aspect to the book in my mind. And also, of course, it's a book about Europe, I suppose. That's the third thing which I had in my mind when I was writing it. I self-consciously wanted to write a book about contemporary Europe, and because I never read a book that really, a novel at least, which really depicted the sort of national fluidity of contemporary Europe and the way people move around the continent in a way that they just didn't do before, I guess.
Yeah. Have you ever been at Cyprus?
No. There are a few places. I mean, have you?
I wonder.
You caught me out with something specific.
Yeah, I wonder. Okay. I wonder, is there a lot of autobiographical elements?
Oh, I see. Well, no. Thankfully, no. I haven't been to Cyprus. And that story is not.
Okay. It's an insider joke.
But I mean, most of the places in the book I have been to. I wouldn't want people to think that I hadn't. I mean, Cyprus is one of only a couple of places in the book that I don't know personally. And obviously, I tried to use what knowledge I had of Europe in the book. So, I mean, I chose places precisely because I had been there, because I did know them, because I had spent at least some time there. And yeah.
Here's a question for Mauro. Actually, I remember one of your sentences from the preface to your edition in 2014, when you say, you can't hear me?
I don't hear you very well.
There is one sentence in the preface of your edition from 2014 when you say that in order to become a writer, the person needs to be honest, direct, and get out of the house and get their hands dirty. And I also felt that in each of these stories that you confront this element of dirty, and I don't mean it in a negative way. I mean it as something really raw and honest, and how you confront this ugly part of human character and the ugly part of the world, how you confront it with something beautiful. Just as in this first story, you confront bombs with carefulness of children, or in the second in second story when where you confront these body fluids of dead men with a love of these women for this man. My question is, how do you maintain this honesty as a writer, and how do you, as a writer who's writing for, I don't know, 20 years, how do you still, you know, maintain and keep this honesty and directness in your writing?
Well, good question.
One question.
It's not hard to do that because I think that writing is a kind of knowledge. It's not an entertainment, and I want to be a writer similar that the writer I love as a reader. And above all, for example, Franz Kafka talk about he wrote a letter to his friend saying we have to use literature, we have to use books as hammer to break the ice inside our spirit. So I think that literature has to be useful. I believe that literature is useful, that you can use as a tool to discover something in yourself that you don't know yet. If you use the literature in this way, naturally you are honest. But of course you can be honest inventing stories, of course. Kafka invented a story with insect that Clark become insect. So, but he was honest. When I wrote that short stories, I remember that period. Before Zalai mentioned the Led Zeppelin, I can remind Radiohead. In that period, I listened to Radiohead CDs, Radiohead songs, and I think a lot of that kind of honesty in Radiohead. You can feel that in my stories. That kind of claustrophobic atmosphere you can feel in that my story by Radiohead, from Radiohead. Another model. I think that writer needs model. Before I mentioned the overcoat of Ivan Goran Kovacic that I imitated him because I believe in models, and for example, during that period, I watched the documentary by Herzog, and Werner Herzog is an author always involved in which he tells. It doesn't matter what he tells, but he's always involved. Not necessarily as a character, but as the experience of author inside the you can say documentary or movies. And I took a lot of things from him. Another models in that period was the movies by Lars von Trier, the first 2 or 3 movies by Lars von Trier. Lars von Trier invented he and together with his friends, they composed the Dogma group. Dogma means rules, and writer need rules, need constraints. You need constraints to be free. If you don't have limit, if you don't have border, you cannot go beyond the border. So that kind of novels, that kind of movies influenced me And I mentioned author very different among them, but in the meantime, I can think they are honest. They keep going to be honest in their career. I don't know if I can understand, if I can mean what I want to mean.
Okay. David, how did you choose a small town in Dalmatian hinterlands to be a place where one story take place?
Well, actually, I mean, the way that came about was that the town I had in mind was actually a town in Hungary.
Page.
Yes.
Okay.
But I already had some Hungarians in one of the stories, and I didn't want it to become too. I didn't want to have more than one appearance of Hungary in the book.
Yeah.
So, and I know the part of Croatia which is close to Hungary is really very similar, and many of the towns remind me very much of Hungarian Tavpage and other towns in southern Hungary.
Yeah, Mr. Orban thinks that it is a part of Hungary, actually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but it's more complicated. I mean, this is very strange, actually, but by pure coincidence, I have come to, I'm now in Page in Hungary, but I was today in Čakovec in Croatia.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Which, and the
it's
reason
pretty the same.
It was very similar first, one thing, but what makes it also interesting is the reason I was there. The reason I was there is that my girlfriend, who's Hungarian, her family roots are there, and her great-grandfather was the headmaster of a school there in around 100 years ago, I guess. And we were going, she wanted to do some research about her family background there. So yesterday evening, I was going around Čakovec cemetery looking for graves with a particular Hungarian name on it. And we didn't find, unfortunately, her family's name, but there were many graves with Hungarian names. And we found my name. We found the name Soloi.
Yeah, it's
Soloi, but the spelling had been Slavicized to Salaj, Soloi. So particularly this area of Europe has obviously always been this melting pot, this very mixed area, and in a way the borders of contemporary nations. The clarity that they sort of purport to lay down on the map isn't quite there in reality. That, of course, is not in any way in support of what Mr. Orban may or may not say, but there is this blurring, and not just in this part of Europe, of course. I mean, in the Rhine Valley and in Scandinavia, in Great Britain, it's everywhere. In Poland. So yeah, there is, I mean, in a way that was one of the things, I guess, that I was trying to, the depiction in the book, In All That Man Is, of Europe as this fluid space in which people are constantly on the move and mixing with people of other nationalities, was in a way, it's not, it used to be perhaps more like that than it has been. The mid-20th century might be a period of sort of maximal non-fluidity, you see, and what we have now might be the return to something that 100 years ago or 200 years ago was perhaps more normal.
Okay, thanks.
A question for Mauro. In your novel, in your stories, you depict a really special atmosphere of the 90s. Can you tell me in which ways Italian society changed since 1998 in terms of
1990?
Since 1998, since the publication of your novel.
You mean my writing? If my writing is changing?
No. In which ways Italian society changed since 90s?
Well, when you talk about 90s, I think we talk about another epoch, another. You have this kind of decade very close to our, but in the meantime is in the other side of the dark side of the moon. So we have an epoch before internet, before cell phone, before as we are working about. So this kind of situation, very strange situation that we are in the same time talking about ourselves, but in three different. I don't know where is Salai. Where do you are connected from, Salai?
I'm in Hungary.
In which part? Page?
In Page, yes, in Page.
Okay, I understood. So I'm speaking from Rome. You from Zagreb. He from Page. So for in the 90s, you cannot imagine such a time, such a kind of universe. You had a lot of science fiction writers. They imagine a lot of things, but they didn't imagine this kind of things. If you talk about they imagine robots and flying cars and any kind of people with many years and so on, but they didn't guess that kind of the epoch that we live right now. So it's hard to compare the writing in it period and right now. I think that even literature, of course, I mean world mondial literature, we have this kind of mixed for different. You have non-fiction, as Zalai talked about just before. You have non-fiction and fiction melt together. You have a lot of kind of literature focus on autobiography writing. You have a sort of probably most people are tired in front of the classic shape of traditional shape of novel. I think they are, I agree with them. I think that kind of novel as a novel similar of 19th century is overpassed, of course, and we have another kind of interesting, but the thing that can be the same in all the epochs that you have your point of view on the reality and your point of view on your work, and we talked about that before. If you think that writing is a kind of knowledge, is a kind of research, you are a kind of writer. It doesn't matter what kind of writer you are, but you're looking for the real life, the real thing. Otherwise, you are a writer that you want to you believe in the writing as an entertainment. You can do that. Is a respectful work, but it's two kind of very different kind of writing, and I think that kind of different keep going in the decades.
Yeah, it's a kind of a scary thought, but also maybe a beautiful one, that writing today about the 90s would be a historical writing.
Yeah.
Also, can you maybe recommend us a few worthwhile Italian contemporary writers or novels or
I like a lot of Italian writers. There are few very good, very. I mean, I can mention Walter Citi. He is a writer. Is 70 years old. There is a younger than him, Emanuele Trevi, is a very good writer, very elegant. He used to have a prose that melt real fiction, non-fiction, and fiction together. We have a great writer called Antonio Moresco. He used to build a huge universe, and he used to have a sort of fighting with the classic of our tradition. He wrote 3 novels similar in opposite position at the Divina Commedia by Dante, and he wrote these 3 Canti del Caos, is also the chapters of the chaos. But there are a few writers very engaged in which I tried to describe before, in this kind of digging ourselves, find the real life. I mean, in reality, we have a lot of information, a lot of news about reality. We have internet, we have social media, we have newspaper, a lot of people. We have scientists, sociologists that can be give us the information about reality. We don't need the reality. We need a kind of work to dig in a real life. I think it's two different things. I'm sorry for my English, but it's hard to explain my thought in English. But it's kind of two different reality and real life. Real life is something that you can catch even in some surreal novels, surreal stories. Real life, you can feel the real life even in the novels by Franz Kafka. It's a real life. You can feel the real life. It's not necessary that you have to describe a place in which you have it, and so on. Okay.
And real life also brings some paradoxes, which literature then somehow exploits. And one of the paradoxes is that Mauro, the Croatian translator of your book, who is tonight with us, is called Marko Kovačić.
Marko Kovačić.
Yeah, so it's like basically two letters different.
You did that on purpose.
So let me do a little speech about my family name. I had I was very interested about what Solai told about the root, Hungarian root, and so on, and I want to specify this kind of the shape in which my family name has written, because during fascism, during the 20s and 30s, during fascism, Mussolini decided to pull away the letter that sounds foreign. So they reply K in the beginning of my name, K, and they reply K by C. And my grandfather that came from Slovenia in the beginning of 19th century, in the 20th century, I'm sorry, decided to, he was a communist, and he was put in jail for 2 years because he was a communist, and he left Slovenia before Tito Republic and so on. And when he was in jail as a communist, I want to specify that, he wrote to his mother in Italian, by Italian. And he wanted to keep the strange shape of the name with C instead K, as a sort of scar of his body, and we can say of our history, because that kind of strange shape, I think that shape could be appear very, very uncomfortable and strange for the audience that heard us. That strange shape tells a part of our history. I mean, the history of Europe. This strange, unusual shape of the family name written. That's the reason why I bear this name. Okay, I bear this name. I say, okay, it's a strange name, but it tells our history.
And my grandmother, who is 102 years old, and she is now isolated in the old people's home because of the COVID-19. Nobody is allowed to go in or out. She was in the resistance movement in the Second World War in Yugoslavia, and she was one of the people she met while working with the partisans was the national hero Đuro Salaj. So he was also probably bearing. I mean, he was bearing the last name as you, David, and he was also a partisan like Ivan Goran Kovačić. So it's all connected. Just for the end, tell me, David. How is the situation in Hungary, and do you feel any difference? I mean, probably you do, but to what extent? I mean, now regarding the pandemic and everything.
Regarding what specifically?
I mean, your work. I mean, did you feel any difference in the last 3 or 4 months since the pandemic started? Have your plans been
because of the COVID? You mean?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
That's what I would like to hear, and I guess.
No. I mean, well, yes, of course. I mean, it's been a very extraordinary. I mean, it's almost unbelievable when I think back to January this year. That already seems like another world. I mean, I actually think I think that it might be possible to exaggerate the effects that this will have long term, but it's certainly true that this has been a really strange year. And I mean, I have 2 children, school-age children. So obviously, when the schools closed, I guess that's possibly for me the sort of the moment when things change the most dramatically. You kind of the role that the schools play in the life of families is total. I mean, without them, we have to sort of reinvent ourselves completely. We obviously had, travel plans were cancelled, and family. I mean, I live in a sort of my wider family is very scattered around Europe and the world, and so trying to sort of get people into contact with each other with the general sense that if we're all going to be locked down, we might as well be locked down in proximity to each other somehow. That involved a lot of rather extraordinary arrangements, trying to sort of move people around in these bizarre conditions. So yes, it's been very strange. But now, I mean, actually in Hungary, things they feel sort of normalish, and in Croatia yesterday or today, I was in Croatia just this morning, they felt I mean, the very fact that I was there says something, right? I mean, I crossed the border, but so yeah, things feel like they're getting back to normal, but there's also this sort of sense that maybe this is a false dawn, and maybe they're going to plunge back into sort of a complete bizarre situation again, and it's just very disorientating, and then it makes it very difficult to plan more than days or weeks in advance, which is quite liberating in a way. There's this feeling that because it's impossible to make plans for the autumn, because who knows what will be going on then in terms of what's possible with travel and with where we'll be and whether the children will be at school or what, it sort of means that we all focus on living today and the next week, and there's something quite nice about that. But I think it's fair to say we'll all remember this year. It will stick out from the years around it.
Yeah. You should come to Zagreb if you are in Čakovec this morning.
I was in Zagreb. Bizarrely, I was in Zagreb yesterday.
well, you should really come here tonight.
I mean, briefly, I was just passing through, but yes, I mean, I believe me, the irony of me actually being in Zagreb yesterday and now doing this, you know, it's not lost on me. It's not lost on me.
Yeah.
But Zagreb seems normalish again.
Yeah, next time tell us. And
yeah. I mean, I would have. I mean, this now seems rude, but sorry. I was there. I was just stopping through. I was there for an hour or so. I didn't snub you.
If this goes on like this, I mean, with the crisis, it will be rude to appear physically.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Mauro, how is it now in Italy?
I didn't hear you.
How is the situation in Italy, and how was your private situation?
Well, in Italy, I'm speaking from Rome. Rome is in better way, in better situation than Lombardia. Lombardia, you know, the region in the north, the most important as it's a sort of economical engine of Italy, suffered very much in the last months. Now they are recovering. I heard a lot of people that live in Milano, and the situation is completely that they are improving, and it's very good. But I think that that's a time in which we have that's what I think. It's a time in which we have to wait. It's a time in which we have to look around and wait. Because as Salai said, it's hard to plan everything, but not only to plan, it's hard to imagine our future. Of course, we will come back in the normality. We hope that, and it will happen. But I think that we will lose a kind of life, a carefree life. You know, even if we will lose a carefree situation. Even when we will be in a good situation, we will be in a funny situation, drinking something. We will lose that kind of carefree. How do you say, when you are light? We are light and not happy, because of course I hope that we will be happy, and we have a short time in which we will be happy and we have fun and so on. But I think that we go in front of a new feeling, a new kind of living our social and everyday life people, everyday life in I mean, a big city, even in the smallest one, in the smaller one, it will be a new a new epoch, I think.
Yeah, the virus is deadly, but it's not serious.
That is
Let's
not
say.
serious.
Okay, I said the virus is deadly, but it's not serious.
Yeah, right.
That's the information come from. I want to say in the end that I really enjoy in both of your books. It's the best things I read this year. So I really enjoy watching.
Thank you both for attending this new form of presentation, new form of life. And I hope we will see you in person in the future
I hope so much.
when we will be able to arrange for you to come to Zagreb. And now I will just turn the computer around so you can see your audience and that is it. And then we will meet again soon, I hope.
Some sunny day.
And I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Evo, molim pljesak.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye, Salai.
Bye. Bye, Maro. Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care.